Welcome to the Terror Time.
The first story is about the hospital that never lets go. It wasn't supposed to go this way. Exploring abandoned places is what I do. Record, document, share. I'd gone to this old hospital, a place known for its haunted halls and chilling scares. As the rain poured down, the sound of each drop against the roof felt like it was drumming a warning. Don't go in. But of course, I didn't listen. This place had been the subject of countless ghost stories, creepypasta tales, and even some scary videos shared on Reddit. I had to check it out. Everyone online was talking about it, about how the spirits of patients who died during a massive fire still wandered its halls. It was late, and I was alone. Well, almost alone. Just me, my camera, and the lingering feeling that I was being watched. Once inside, the rain sounds faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The kind that presses on your chest and makes you feel like you're not really home alone. As I wandered through the decaying rooms, the faint echo of footsteps seemed to follow me, but every time I turned around, nothing. My flashlight barely cut through the thick air, and the shadows seemed alive, crawling along the walls like demons searching for something or someone. I wasn't scared at first. After all, I'd read enough paranormal horror stories and watched plenty of scary stories animated on YouTube to know how this stuff worked. But soon, the temperature dropped and I could see my breath. That's when things got weird. The lights from my camera flickered as if some paranormal activity was messing with them. In the distance, I heard a soft crying sound, like a child. It echoed through the hallways, tugging at my nerves. My mind raced back to the rumors, the true stories of kids who were admitted to this hospital and never left. And then I saw it, a shadow, barely there, just in the corner of my vision. A flicker of movement near one of the shattered windows. I tried to play it off, telling myself it was just a trick of the light, but deep down I knew this place was alive. I kept filming, documenting everything, knowing that whatever was happening, it was going to make for some killer content. My viewers loved this kind of stuff. Caught on camera, I'd call it a true ghost hunting experience in the most haunted place I had ever explored. I made my way to the second floor, the part of the hospital rumored to have been the children's ward. The stories about this place were horrific. Nurses who heard voices, saw shadows, and even felt cold hands grab them overnight. I wasn't sure if I believed all the rumors, but standing there, in the middle of that long, empty hallway, I started to. The lights from my camera flickered again, and then went out completely. My heart pounded as I stood in the darkness, the cold creeping into my bones. I heard it again, the crying. This time, it was closer. I couldn't tell if it was real or if I was just having a nightmare, but there was no way I was staying to find out. I turned to leave when I saw it. A figure standing at the end of the hall. A child, no more than 10 years old, her face pale, her eyes black holes that seemed to swallow the light around them. She just stood there, staring at me. I froze. Was this some kind of sick joke? But as I blinked, she was gone. In her place, a door creaked open, revealing a room I hadn't noticed before. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. It was filled with old, rusted beds, some still covered in dirty, decaying sheets. And there in the corner, I saw her again. This time sitting on one of the beds, her mouth moving, whispering something I couldn't hear. My camera was recording, but I knew no one would believe what I was seeing. It was too real, too terrifying. I ran. I don't remember how I made it out, but the moment I burst through the hospital doors and into the rain, I felt like the air was ripped from my lungs. It was over. At least, I thought it was. But that night, when I got home, the nightmare wasn't over. As I lay in bed, I heard the sound of footsteps, soft, almost like a child's, walking through my house. I thought I was just imagining it. But then I heard the faint sound of crying. My heart raced. I was home alone, or at least I was supposed to be. I bolted upright, my eyes scanning the room, but nothing was there. And yet, the footsteps continued, getting closer. I grabbed my camera, still recording, and aimed it toward the hallway. In the reflection of the lens, I saw her. The same girl, standing just outside my bedroom door. Her black eyes stared at me, and her mouth moved again, whispering something I couldn't understand. I'll never forget the chill that ran through my spine at that moment. The next day, when I reviewed the footage, there was nothing there. No girl, no crying, just the sound of rain. But I know what I saw. It's been weeks now, and I still hear her sometimes. Whispers in the dark, footsteps in the hall. I thought leaving the hospital would be the end, but it turns out some ghosts never let go. The second story is about voices in the dark. It started like any other night, dark, cold, with the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows. This time I wasn't investigating an abandoned hospital by myself. I had invited a few friends who were eager to do some ghost hunting with me. They were fascinated by the true horror stories I'd shared before and thought this would be a thrilling experience. We gathered all our gear, cameras, EMF readers, and flashlights, ready to capture some paranormal activity. The building loomed ahead, its towering silhouette shrouded in mist and rain. It was one of those places that looked like a haunted house straight out of animated horror stories. I'd heard rumors from Reddit that the hospital was haunted by more than just your usual spirits, something darker, like demons. My friends joked about it as we approached, but I could feel the weight of something watching us, waiting. Inside, the air was thick and damp. The old corridors, littered with crumbling walls and rusting medical equipment, seemed to echo the screams of past patients. As we ventured deeper, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There were no sounds except the occasional drip of water and the distant hum of the rain. The first sign of trouble came when our EMF reader started going off, spiking wildly near one of the operating rooms. It wasn't unusual to get a reading, but this was intense. My friends laughed it off, recording the incident on their phones for some scary videos, but I knew better. This wasn't some harmless paranormal disturbance. I felt a chill run down my spine, a sensation I had come to associate with the presence of something malevolent. As we continued, we started hearing things, soft whispers like someone talking just out of earshot. At first, it sounded like rain sounds hitting the roof, but the further we walked, the clearer the voices became. We followed the sounds to a large, decrepit room that might have once been a ward. The moment we stepped inside, the temperature dropped, and my breath fogged in the air. "Do you hear that?" one of my friends asked, her voice shaking. I nodded. It was faint, but unmistakable. A child's voice. Creepy, almost like something out of a horror story. We stood there, trying to make sense of it, when suddenly the door slammed shut behind us. The sound echoed down the hallway, leaving us trapped inside the room. The whispers grew louder, circling around us like a storm. My friend shined his flashlight into the corner of the room, and that's when we saw it, a figure barely visible, standing near the window. It wasn't moving, just staring at us. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to tell myself it was just a trick of the light, but then it moved. My friend screamed and stumbled backward, the flashlight flickering wildly. The figure disappeared, but the room felt charged with an energy that left us paralyzed with fear. My camera was still recording, but none of us could move. It felt like something was pressing down on us, draining the strength from our bodies. We were trapped, helpless. "I think we need to leave," I muttered, my voice barely audible over the pounding in my head. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if the entire hospital had come alive, trapping us inside its walls. The whispers turned into soft laughter, childlike but wrong, filled with malice. We finally managed to pry the door open, and we bolted down the hall. As we ran, the lights from our cameras flickered, and shadows moved in the corners of our vision. The hospital wasn't just haunted, it was alive, feeding off our fear. We sprinted through the endless corridors, the sounds of footsteps echoing behind us as if something was chasing us, laughing as it did. When we reached the exit, I turned to look one last time. That's when I saw them. Ghosts, or what I thought were ghosts, standing just beyond the threshold, their pale faces twisted into ghastly smiles. I slammed the door behind us and collapsed in the rain, gasping for air. We had made it out, but whatever we had disturbed in that hospital wasn't done with us. That night, as I lay in bed, trying to process what had happened, I heard the same whispers again. At first, I thought it was just in my head, but then I saw it. A shadow, standing in the corner of my room, watching me. My camera had captured nothing but static when I reviewed the footage, but I knew what I saw. The next morning, one of my friends called me in a panic. She had woken up to find strange bruises on her arms, like fingerprints, as if someone or something had grabbed her in the night. Another friend claimed he had heard the same whispers and seen the same shadow in his apartment. It wasn't over. Whatever was in that hospital had followed us. The more we tried to forget, the worse it got. Over the next few nights, I started experiencing nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams of being trapped in the hospital, chased by the shadows that lurked in its halls. I wasn't home alone anymore. Every night, I could feel it, the weight of something watching me, waiting for me to fall asleep. One night, I decided to set up my camera in my bedroom, hoping to catch something. And I did. Around 3 a.m., the camera picked up movement, my closet door opening slowly, followed by the faint sound of whispers. Then, something stepped out, a shadow, barely visible, but undeniably there. It moved toward my bed, and the last thing the camera recorded before going dark was the sound of laughter, a child's laughter, echoing through the room. I don't sleep much anymore. The nightmares have become constant, and the whispers never stop. I've tried everything, burning sage, calling priests, but nothing works. Whatever I brought back with me from that hospital isn't leaving. I made the mistake of going ghost hunting in a place I should have stayed far away from, and now I'm paying the price. The third story is about the night shift from hell. I'd never been one to believe in paranormal activity. Growing up, I always found ghost stories amusing, a nice distraction, but nothing more than fiction. That changed the night I worked a shift at the abandoned hospital, filling in as a security guard. It was raining that night, the rhythmic rain sounds pattering against the empty windows as I pulled up to the entrance, headlights illuminating the overgrown weeds that clawed at the building like something desperate to escape. The place had been closed for years, and stories about it had become the stuff of creepypasta, scary stories, and Reddit threads. It was a place people dared each other to explore, whispering tales of demons and spirits trapped in its decaying walls. But I wasn't one to scare easily. I had taken the overnight shift because I needed the extra cash, nothing more. The first few hours were quiet, almost too quiet. The dim corridors stretched into darkness, only illuminated by my flashlight as I patrolled. But the deeper I went into the hospital, the more I felt it, the cold, the pressure in the air, like something heavy was bearing down on me. I shook it off, attributing it to the eerie silence and my own imagination. It wasn't until I reached the old operating room that things started to get creepy. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, my breath clouding the air in front of me. My radio crackled with static, even though I was the only one in the building. I turned to leave when I saw it. A shadow, faint but unmistakable, moving in the reflection of the cracked glass on one of the cabinets. I froze, staring at the figure, but when I turned around, there was no one there. It was just me and the cold, lifeless room. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a trick of the light, or my mind playing games. After all, it wasn't the first time someone had claimed to see something in this hospital. Over the years, ghost hunting groups had come in with their gear, hoping to capture something caught on camera, some proof of the true horror stories people whispered about. But all anyone ever left with was shaky footage and scary videos that didn't convince anyone. As the night wore on, the feeling of unease only grew. Every time I turned a corner, it felt like I was being watched, like something was lurking just out of sight. The lights above me flickered, and my radio kept cutting in and out with bursts of static and what sounded like faint voices. I tried to shake it off, but the deeper I went, the more the hospital seemed to come alive. The shadows shifted, and I swore I could hear whispers echoing down the hallways. Then came the footsteps. Soft at first, like someone was walking down the hall ahead of me. I followed the sound, thinking maybe someone had broken in. But as I rounded the corner, I was met with nothing but an empty corridor. The footsteps continued, now behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but again, nothing. The hospital was playing tricks on me, I told myself, trying to laugh it off. But the laughter felt hollow. I returned to the security office to check the monitors. Most of the cameras had long since stopped working, their screens filled with static, but a few still functioned, showing grainy footage of the hallways. As I watched, something strange caught my eye. In one of the hallways where I had just been, there was movement. A figure, small and pale, standing just at the edge of the camera's view. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen. It was a child, I stared at the monitor, disbelief flooding my mind. The figure didn't move, just stood there, staring at the camera. But when I blinked, it was gone. I rewound the footage, but there was no trace of the child, just static and empty halls. My heart raced. Nightmare horror was the only word that came to mind. I was starting to feel like I was in one of those animated horror stories you see on YouTube. But this was real, too real. I decided to walk back to that hallway, convinced there had to be some logical explanation. Maybe I was just tired, my mind playing tricks on me. But when I got there, the air felt different, heavier, colder. And then I heard it, the laughter. Soft, childlike, echoing through the hall. It sent a chill down my spine. I turned my flashlight in every direction, but there was no one there. Suddenly, the lights in the hallway flickered, and I saw them. Shadows, shifting, growing, moving toward me. They weren't human, their shapes were wrong, twisted, like something out of a scary story you tell around a campfire. My breath caught in my throat as I realized the hospital wasn't haunted by just spirits. Something darker was here. Demons, maybe, or something far worse. I stumbled backward, trying to get away, but the shadows followed, their forms stretching along the walls. I ran, my footsteps echoing through the empty halls, but no matter how fast I moved, the shadows were always just behind me. The whispers grew louder, filling my head with voices I couldn't understand. It felt like I was being pulled deeper into the darkness, and no matter how much I fought, the hospital wouldn't let me go. Finally, I reached the entrance. I burst through the doors and into the rain, gasping for air. The hospital loomed behind me, dark and silent, but I could still feel it, whatever was inside, watching, waiting. I never went back, but the nightmares have followed me ever since. The shadows, the whispers, the child's laughter, it all haunts me. Now, every time it rains, I hear those same whispers, and sometimes when I wake in the middle of the night, I see them. Shadows dancing on the walls, just waiting for me to fall back asleep. The fourth story is about the ward that never sleeps. They say certain places are cursed, places where the air feels heavy and every shadow seems alive. This abandoned hospital was one of those places, the kind where even the bravest ghost hunters hesitated. The stories online, creepypasta posts, Reddit threads, scary videos, were all the same. People went in, but they didn't come out the same. Some claimed it was haunted by restless spirits, others whispered about demons lurking in the shadows. I thought they were exaggerating. I was wrong. The night I visited, it was raining, the steady rain sounds creating a rhythm that seemed to sync with the faint hum of the hospital's broken lights. I was here to film, as usual, another creepy exploration for my channel, documenting haunted locations. I had been to countless places like this, but something about this hospital made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the endless hallways that seemed to stretch on forever, or maybe it was the stories about paranormal activity here. Rumors of objects moving on their own, strange voices, and shadows that didn't belong. I had my camera ready, determined to capture anything caught on camera that would make for great content. The hallway was narrow, lined with old, rusting gurneys, the remnants of a time when this place had seen life instead of death. My breath fogged up in the cold air, and I swore I heard whispers, soft, just out of reach. I told myself it was the wind or maybe water leaking from the ceiling, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. As I moved deeper into the hospital, the feeling of being watched became overwhelming. Every step I took echoed, but the sound didn't match my pace. It was as if someone or something was following me, mimicking my every move. I stopped, turning quickly, but I was alone. The only thing behind me was darkness. The first sign of real trouble came when I reached the old children's ward. Ghost stories had always surrounded this part of the hospital. People said it was where most of the paranormal occurrences happened, where visitors heard children laughing or crying, even though no children had been here in years. I stepped inside, the smell of mildew and decay filling my nose. That's when I saw it. A small figure standing by one of the rusted hospital beds. My heart stopped. It was a child, a little boy, pale, with eyes that seemed far too dark for his face. He stared at me, unmoving, silent. I blinked, and he was gone. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the light, but when I reviewed the footage later, the camera didn't lie. He was there, just for a moment, caught on camera, before vanishing into thin air. I should have left then, but I didn't. I continued to explore, the air growing colder, the whispers louder. At some point, I found myself back in the main hallway, standing in front of a large door. It was slightly ajar, the words "isolation ward" barely visible under the grime. I pushed it open, my flashlight barely cutting through the thick darkness. Inside, it was worse than anywhere else in the hospital. The walls were covered in scratches, as if something or someone had been trying to claw their way out. The whispers were deafening now, swirling around me like a storm, voices overlapping, some crying, others laughing. I felt dizzy, the room spinning, and then I saw them. Shadows, too many to count, moving along the walls, crawling toward me. I stumbled back, my heart racing. I tried to leave, but the door slammed shut on its own. The lights flickered, and in the brief moments of illumination, I saw their faces, pale, ghostly faces with wide, hollow eyes staring at me from every corner of the room. The hospital wasn't just haunted by the dead, it was a nightmare come to life. These weren't just ghosts, they were something darker, something that fed off fear. The shadows grew closer, their movements erratic, inhuman. I couldn't breathe, my chest tight with terror. One of them reached out, its hand brushing against my skin, cold as death. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, like they were trying to tell me something. I couldn't make sense of the words, but the message was clear. I wasn't supposed to be here. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. I was alone with them now, no escape. I could feel them all around me, watching, waiting for me to make a move. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to even scream. The only sound was the rapid beating of my heart and the occasional creak of the building settling around me. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The whispers faded, the shadows disappeared, and the door creaked open. I didn't waste a second. I ran. I didn't stop until I was outside, the rain pouring down, washing away the suffocating feeling of the hospital. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But even as I made my way to the safety of my car, I knew it wasn't over. I could still feel them watching me, their cold, empty eyes lingering on my back. I made it home, thinking I had escaped whatever haunted that place. But that night, as I lay in bed, I heard the whispers again. They were faint, but unmistakable. The feeling of being watched had followed me home. I turned on my camera, hoping to catch something, but when I reviewed the footage the next morning, there was nothing, just static. Except, in the last frame, there was a figure. Small, pale, standing in the corner of my room,